The transmission showed her sister's city burning under quarantine shields. Commander Yira Valeth watched the footage 3 times before she could accept it was real. The Crimson Blight had spread faster than anyone predicted. 3 major cities were now under lockdown. Her sister Sella and young nephew Keth were somewhere inside that red zone, and the mortality rate had climbed to 89%. Yira was a fleet commander of the Siren Collective, the 3rd highest military rank in her entire species. She had commanded warships and negotiated treaties. Surely that meant something. She rushed to the Galactic Council chamber on Station Meridian 7, expecting her rank to open doors. Instead, a board clerk told her to submit a formal request and wait 6 rotations. 6 rotations? Yira's scales shifted from calm blue to angry orange. My people are dying now. The clerk did not look up. Protocol, Commander. Yira found another way. She invoked an ancient emergency provision that allowed any species facing extinction-level threats to address the full council immediately. It had not been used in 200 years. The council chamber was a vast dome where representatives of 43 species floated in their designated pods. The Siren pod was near the outer edge, a position that matched their middling status in galactic politics. Yira stood before them all. She showed the footage. She presented the medical data. She described how the Crimson Blight turned healthy scales red and brittle before destroying every organ in the body. She explained that her people had no cure and no treatment. I formally request humanitarian aid, she said. Medical experts, research support, supplies, anything you can offer. The responses came one by one. Each one was a knife. The Vendari, who currently led the council, spoke first. High Arbiter Moloth's massive slug-like body rippled with what might have been sympathy. We cannot risk contamination of our own worlds. Protocol forbids it. The Kreth representative expressed concern, but explained that their medical technology was incompatible with Siren biology. A lie. Yira had seen Kreth doctors treat Siren patients before. The Orion Syndicate suggested that perhaps a formal alliance treaty should be negotiated first. These things took time. Years, usually. Species after species made excuses. Some were polite about it, some were not. One representative actually yawned. During her presentation, Yira had helped several of these species in the past. The Siren had sent aid ships when the Vendari colonies faced a meteor shower. They had shared agricultural technology with the Kreth during their food crisis. None of that mattered now. Her rank meant nothing here. Her service record meant nothing. Her dying people meant nothing. After 3 hours, Yira's voice was hoarse, and her scales had faded to exhausted gray. She had run out of arguments and dignity. Please, she said simply, we need help. The chamber was silent. Yira gathered her documents and prepared to leave in shame. As she turned, she noticed a small delegation in the far corner that she had ignored entirely. They occupied the smallest pod, positioned even further from the center than the Siren. The humans. They had only joined the council 12 cycles ago. Most species considered them primitives from a brutal deathworld. Their technology was crude by galactic standards. Their lifespans were embarrassingly short. They had no political power and no influence. Yira had never spoken to a human. She had never seen a reason to. A woman from the human delegation was walking toward her. She was small by human standards, with dark skin and gray hair pulled back from her face. She wore simple clothing without any marks of rank or status. Commander Valeth, the woman said. Yira almost did not stop. What could humans possibly offer? But she was desperate enough to grasp at any hope. Yes. I am Dr. Amira Akanjo. I represent Earth's humanitarian division. The woman's voice was calm and warm. We heard your presentation, all of it. And Yira expected another excuse, another delay. We want to help. Yira blinked. What do you want in return? Dr. Akanjo looked confused. Nothing, you need help, we can provide it, that is enough. That is not how galactic politics works. Maybe not, the human smiled slightly. But it is how humans work. We have medical ships that can reach your homeworld in 3 days, doctors and researchers who specialize in unknown pathogens, equipment and supplies. Yira stared at her. This had to be a trick, some long-term political game she could not see. Why, she asked. Because people are dying and we might be able to save them. Dr. Akanjo said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. What other reason would we need? Yira did not know how to respond. In 200 years of galactic diplomacy, no one had ever offered aid without conditions. There was always a price, always. I will need to consult with my government, Yira said carefully. Of course, Dr. Akanjo handed her a communication device. Contact us when you are ready, we will be waiting. Yira took the device. It felt impossibly light in her four-fingered hand. Behind her, the council chamber buzzed with the usual political chatter. Species negotiated. Favors were traded. Alliances shifted. And in the corner, ignored by everyone who mattered, the humans waited to help. Yira did not understand them. But as she looked at the device in her hand and thought of her sister trapped in a dying city, she realized she did not need to understand. She just needed to say yes. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel above Cyrene Prime, and Yira felt her stomach twist with an emotion she could not name. She had expected 1 small vessel. The humans sent 3. She had expected 30 personnel. They brought 200. The human fleet hung in orbit above her dying world like strange metal birds. Their ships were ugly by galactic standards, blocky and practical, covered in exposed pipes and antenna arrays. No elegance, no artistry, just function. Yira waited at the landing platform in her full military uniform. Every medal she had earned was pinned to her chest. Her scales were polished to their brightest blue. 4 armed guards stood behind her in perfect formation. She was a fleet commander. The humans would need to understand what that meant. The first shuttle landed with a heavy thud. The ramp lowered and a man walked out. He was older, with brown skin and gray at his temples. He wore a simple white coat with no decorations at all. He walked straight to Yira and extended his hand. Dr. Louis Ferreira, he said, you must be Yira, nice to meet you. Yira stared at the offered hand. In Cyrene culture, first contact between officials required formal bows, exchange of titles, and at least 10 minutes of ceremonial greetings. I am Commander Valeth, she corrected. Right, Commander, Louis nodded and kept his hand extended. Is this not how your species greets people? It is not how military officials greet subordinates. Louis laughed, actually laughed. I am not your subordinate, Commander. I am a doctor who came to help. Now, do you want to shake hands or should we skip it and get to work? Yira shook his hand. She did not know what else to do. Behind Louis, more humans emerged from the shuttles. They carried boxes and equipment. They moved with purpose but no formation. Some were talking and joking with each other. One woman was eating something from a wrapper as she walked. It was chaos, beautiful, terrible chaos. A younger woman with dark hair approached. She wore military-style clothing but carried a medical bag. Sergeant Priya Sharma, she said. Medical Support Corps, where do you need us, Commander? Finally, someone who understood rank. I will assign you a liaison officer who will coordinate your activities according to proper protocol, Yira said. All requests must go through the chain of command. Priya and Louis exchanged a look that Yira could not read. With respect, Commander, Priya said, people are dying. We do not have time for paperwork. Protocol exists for good reasons. Sure, Priya nodded toward the quarantine shield glowing red in the distance. But those reasons do not include letting people die while we file reports. The humans began unloading without waiting for permission. They did not ask where to go. They looked at the quarantine zone, looked at their maps, and started moving. Yira's liaison officer, a young lieutenant named Verk, approached her in confusion. Commander, they are not following our procedures. They are speaking directly to local doctors without authorization. They are making decisions without approval. I can see that, Lieutenant. Should I stop them? Yira watched as a team of humans suited up in protective gear. They were preparing to enter the quarantine zone, the place where 89% of patients died. They had no siren immunity. They had no genetic resistance. Commander, Verk pressed, should I stop them? No, Yira said quietly. Let them work. The humans entered the red zone within 2 hours of landing. By the end of the first day, they had established 3 field hospitals and begun treating patients alongside siren doctors. Yira received reports every hour. The humans were not taking charge. They were listening to local medical staff. They were adapting their techniques to siren biology. They were learning. But they still would not follow protocol. On the second day, Yira entered the command center to find Lewis studying medical data with no rank insignia, no formal permission, and a cup of steaming brown liquid in his hand. Commander, he said without looking up, your sister is in Field Hospital 7, stable for now. Her son is healthy. Yira froze. How do you know about my sister? You mentioned her in your council speech. I remembered. He finally looked at her. You can call her if you want. He held out a communication device. That would require formal authorization through military channels. Lewis smiled, or you could just call her. Yira took the device. Her hand was shaking. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why did you come here? What do you want from us? Lewis set down his cup. His eyes were tired but kind. Commander, I have been a doctor for 30 years. I have watched people die from diseases I could not cure. When I heard about your plague, I thought maybe this time I could make a difference. He shrugged. That is all. No politics, no treaties, just the chance to help. Yira looked at the device in her hand, then at the quarantine zone where humans were risking their lives for strangers. She did not understand these people, their chaos, their informality, their complete disregard for everything she had been taught about proper order. But they had answered when no one else would. She pressed the button and called her sister. The child was teaching the human woman a siren counting game when Yira found them. Her nephew Keth sat on a medical cot, his small scales still showing traces of the red that marked infection survivors. Across from him, a human nurse named Belen Reyes was failing miserably at the game and laughing about it. No, no, Keth said in his high child's voice. You have to touch all 4 hands at the same time. I only have 2 hands, Belen said. Humans are at a disadvantage here. That is not my fault. Belen laughed again. The sound was strange in a place filled with so much death. Yira had entered the quarantine zone against protocol. She had told herself it was to inspect the human operation. The truth was simpler. She needed to see her sister. She found Sella in a recovery ward. Her sister was thin and weak, her normally bright scales faded to dull gray, but she was alive. Yira, Sella's voice was barely a whisper. You should not be here. I am a fleet commander. I go where I choose. Sella smiled weakly. Still giving orders, some things never change. Yira sat beside her sister's bed. Around them, the ward was full of patients in various stages of illness and recovery. Human. Doctors and siren medical staff moved between beds, working together in a way Yira had never seen before. The humans saved me, Sella said. Their treatment started working on my 3rd day. Dr. Lewis sat with me all night when my fever was highest. He should have been resting, managing his energy for more important work. He said I was the important work. Sella closed her eyes. Strange people, these humans. Yira watched them move through the ward. They did not separate themselves from the siren staff. They did not give orders or take charge. They simply worked alongside everyone else, doing whatever needed to be done. An elderly siren doctor approached her. Yira recognized him immediately. Elder physician Tarath was the most respected medical expert on the planet. He had been treating the plague since its first appearance. Commander Valeth, he said, I expected you sooner. Elder physician, how is the situation? Tarath was quiet for a moment. His scales shifted through several colors that Yira could not read. When the humans first arrived, I was insulted, he admitted. Outsiders coming to do what siren doctors could not. It felt like an insult to my entire career. And now I understand I was a fool. Tarath gestured at the busy ward. In 5 days, they have made more progress than we made in 2 months. They brought knowledge we did not have, techniques we had never considered. They asked questions we were too proud to ask ourselves. Yira frowned. They ignore our protocols. They refuse to follow the chain of command. Yes, Tarath smiled. It is wonderful, is it not? They do not waste time on ceremony. They simply work. A commotion erupted at the far end of the ward. Power had failed in a section of the hospital. Emergency lights flickered on as patients began to panic. Yira moved toward the problem, but the humans were already there. She watched as Sergeant Priya directed evacuation procedures while human engineers worked with siren technicians to restore power. A young siren child was crying, separated from her parents in the confusion. Priya scooped the child up without hesitation, holding her gently despite the spines on the child's back that could have pierced human skin. It is okay, little one, Priya said in accented but understandable siren. We will find your family. The child stopped crying. She stared at Priya with wide eyes. You are human. Yes. Are you? Really from a death world? Priya smiled. We prefer to call it a challenge world, makes us sound less scary. The power came back on. The crisis passed. Priya returned the child to her relieved parents and went back to work without any acknowledgement or thanks expected. Yira found Lewis reviewing patient files near the main entrance. She had come to complain about the slow progress, to demand faster results, but the words died in her throat. Why is this taking so long? She finally managed. You have been here almost a week. Lewis did not look offended. The Crimson Blight is unlike anything in our medical records. We are learning as we go, making progress every day, but there is no instant cure. My people are dying while you learn. I know, his voice was gentle, and I wish I could work faster, but medicine does not care about wishes. It cares about data and testing and time. That is not good enough. It is all I have, Commander. Lewis met her eyes. I understand you are scared. I would be scared too, but I promise you every human on this planet is working as hard as they can. We will find a treatment. We just need more time. Yira wanted to argue. She wanted to demand. She wanted to use her rank to force faster results. But rank could not cure disease. Authority could not stop death. How much time? She asked quietly. I do not know, but we will not give up. I promise you that. Yira looked around the ward, at the humans working without rest, at the siren doctors who had learned to trust them, at her sister sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. I believe you, she said. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she actually meant it. Dr. Nadia Petrov had not slept in 4 days, and she had just saved an entire species. Yira received the news at midnight. A treatment had been developed. A modified human antiviral combined with a siren enzyme showed 93% effectiveness in laboratory tests. The cure existed. But there was a problem. The treatment required a protein found only in a rare ocean plant called silverleaf. The plant grew in deep waters off the coast of Verath, the capital city currently under the heaviest quarantine. All harvesting infrastructure in the region had collapsed. Automated systems were offline. The waters were dangerous. We need the plant within 48 hours, Nadia explained through the communication screen. Her eyes were red. From exhaustion. After that, the current batch of patients will be beyond saving. Yira immediately began drafting orders. I will mobilize a military expedition. Underwater vehicles, support personnel, full security protocol. How long will that take? Yira calculated. 4 days to organize, 1 day for transit, 1 day for harvesting. We do not have 6 days. Protocol requires proper preparation, safety assessments, chain of command approval. A new voice entered the conversation. Lieutenant Kofi Mensah was a pilot who had been running supply missions between orbit and the surface. He was young, with dark skin and an easy smile that seemed out of place in a crisis. I can get there in 3 hours, Kofi said. Small shuttle, minimal crew, in and out before the storms hit. Yira shook her head. Absolutely not. The region is unstable. Weather patterns are violent. We have no backup available. Commander, with respect, we do not have a choice. I am giving you an order, Lieutenant. Kofi looked at her with calm eyes. Commander, you cannot order me. I am not Siren military. I am a volunteer. All of us are. Yira had no response to that. Kofi assembled a team, 3 humans and 2 Siren volunteers. They loaded harvesting equipment onto a small shuttle and launched before Yira could find a regulation to stop them. She watched their signal on the tracking screen for hours. The shuttle moved through storms that would have torn apart larger vessels. It descended into waters that no siren had entered in decades. Communication became sporadic, then disappeared entirely. Yira found herself praying to gods she had not believed in since childhood. 6 hours later, the shuttle reappeared on sensors. It was moving slowly and broadcasting damage warnings. Yira ran to the landing platform, arriving just as the vessel touched down with a grinding crash. The landing struts had failed. One engine was completely destroyed. The hull was scorched and dented from electrical storms. The ramp lowered. Kofi limped out, supported by one of the Siren volunteers. His right leg was wrapped in emergency bandages. Blood stained the white fabric. The samples, he said immediately, are the samples safe? Yira looked past him into the shuttle. The other team members were unloading containers filled with silvery plant material, more than enough for the treatment. The samples are safe, she confirmed. Kofi smiled despite his pain. Worth it. Medical personnel rushed to treat the injured. Yira followed Kofi as he was carried to the field hospital, refusing to leave until she had answers. Why did you do this? She demanded. You could have died, all of you could have died. Kofi lay on the examination table while a Siren doctor cleaned his wound. The leg was badly broken. He would walk with a limp for the rest of his life. Someone needed help, he said simply. I could help, that is all. That is not all. You are not even Siren. This is not your world. These are not your people. Kofi was quiet for a moment. The doctor began setting his bone, and he winced but did not cry out. When I was 12, he finally said, there was a flood in my village, water everywhere. My grandmother was trapped in her house. A man I had never met swam through the flood to save her. He nearly drowned doing it. Who was he? I never found out. He disappeared into the chaos before I could thank him, but I never forgot what he did. Kofi met Yira's eyes. Today I was that man for someone else. That is enough. Within hours, Nadia had synthesized the first batch of treatment. Patients began receiving doses. By morning, the first recoveries were being reported. Yira visited Kofi again after her sister received the treatment. Sella was responding well. She would survive. Keth would grow up with a mother. Thank you, Yira said to the injured pilot. I do not know how to repay you. Kofi waved his hand dismissively. You can repay me by helping someone else someday. Pass it forward. That is how humans do things. Yira looked at his broken leg, at the simple hospital room, at the man who had sacrificed his mobility for strangers. I do not understand your species, she admitted. Most species do not, Kofi smiled. But that is okay. Understanding is not required for kindness. You just do it because it is right. Yira had commanded fleets. She had won battles and signed treaties. She had believed that power came from rank and authority. She had been wrong. True power came from willingness, the willingness to act when action was needed, the willingness to sacrifice without expecting reward. The humans had taught her that. She would not forget. The first patient to walk out of quarantine was a young mother carrying her infant daughter. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived. The mortality rate had dropped from 89% to 12%. Recovery wards were filling faster than death wards. For the first time since the plague began, there was hope. Yira watched the celebrations from her office window. Families reunited in tears. Children ran through the streets without fear. The quarantine shields were coming down one by one. Her door chimed. She expected Lewis or Priya with another update. Instead, a Vendari diplomat entered. Council observer Dreth was massive, slug-like, and thoroughly unpleasant. "Commander Valeth," he said, "I have been sent to assess the situation. The situation is that my people are surviving, thanks to human intervention." "Yes, that is precisely the concern." Dreth settled his bulk into a chair that groaned under his weight. "The Council has noticed that the Siren are becoming dependent on a primitive species. They saved us. They have gained influence, access to your world, knowledge of your vulnerabilities." Dreth's small eyes gleamed. "The major powers are worried about what humans might demand in return." "They have demanded nothing." "Nothing yet," Dreth leaned forward. "But they will. All species do eventually. When that moment comes, the Siren will owe an enormous debt to a race that has no place in galactic politics." Yira's scales shifted to cold blue. "Is that a threat, observer?" "It is advice. Distance yourself from the humans. Reassert Siren authority over the relief efforts. The Council will look favorably upon such wisdom." After Dreth left, Yira received a summons from her father. Admiral Sirath Valeth was the highest military authority on Siren Prime. He was also a traditionalist who believed that accepting outside help was a sign of weakness. Yira found him in his command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the recovering cities. He did not look happy about the good news. "You have allowed humans to operate freely on our territory," he said without greeting. "They are saving lives, Father. They are undermining our authority. Reports indicate that Siren citizens are thanking humans instead of their own military. Human doctors are being treated as heroes, while our own medical staff are forgotten. That is because the humans found the cure. With Siren resources, on Siren soil, using Siren infrastructure." Sirath's scales flashed angry red. "This victory belongs to us, not to them. Does it matter who gets credit if our people survive?" Sirath stared at her, as if she had spoken a foreign language. "Of course it matters. Politics requires power. Power requires perception. If the galaxy sees us as the species that needed primitive deathworlders to save them, our standing will collapse. Our standing in the Council meant nothing when we were dying. No one helped us except the humans. That was unfortunate, but the crisis is ending. Now we must think about the future." Sirath straightened to his full height. "I am ordering you to reassert military control over the relief operation. Human personnel will report to Siren commanders. All public communications will emphasize Siren contributions." Yira had never disobeyed her father. She had never questioned his authority. He was her commanding officer and her parent. Duty and family demanded obedience. But duty and family had not saved her sister. Humans had. "No," she said. Sirath's scales went from red to purple, a color she had never seen on him before. "What did you say?" "I said no, Father. I will not diminish what the humans have done. They came when no one else would. They risked their lives without expecting reward. They treated our dying citizens with more compassion than our own allies showed." "You are making a political mistake." "Maybe," Yira met his eyes. "But I am making a moral decision. I have watched these humans work for 3 weeks. They do not care about politics or power or perception. They care about helping people, and if that makes me politically unwise, then I would rather be wise in a different way." Sirath was silent for a long moment. "You sound like your mother," he finally said. "Thank you." It was not meant as a compliment, but Yira took it as one anyway. A ceremony was organized to honor the human medical team. Thousands of recovered patients attended. Yira was asked to give the official speech of gratitude. She had prepared formal remarks, proper titles, diplomatic language, the kind of speech her father would have approved. At the podium, she set the prepared text aside. "I am Commander Yira Valeth," she began. "3 weeks ago, I was a fleet commander begging the galaxy for help. No one answered except a species I had never even spoken to, humans." She looked at the human delegation standing at the edge of the crowd. Louis, Priya, Nadia, Kofi with his new cane, Belen, Amira, all of them looking uncomfortable with attention they had not sought. These people did not come for politics or profit. They came because we were dying and they could help. That was their only reason. Her voice cracked slightly. As a commander, I was taught that strength comes from rank and authority. These humans taught me something different. True strength comes from the willingness to help without conditions. She stepped back from the podium. "Thank you," she said simply, "from a sister, an aunt, and a siren who will never forget." The crowd erupted in applause. And somewhere in the back, her father watched in silence. 6 months later, Yira returned to the place where her nightmare had begun. The Galactic Council chamber looked the same. Same dome ceiling, same floating pods, same representatives making the same political calculations they always made. But Yira was different. She was no longer a fleet commander. She had requested a transfer to the diplomatic corps. Her new position as Siren representative was considered a demotion by everyone who measured success in military ranks. Yira considered it a promotion. The Siren pod had been moved closer to the center, a small victory that had cost nothing and meant everything. And next to them, in a slightly larger pod than before, sat the human delegation. Today's debate was about a famine on a Kreth colony world. The same Kreth who had refused to help the Siren during the plague. Now they were the ones begging for assistance. Yira watched the familiar dance begin. The Vendari expressed concern but cited logistical difficulties. The Orion Syndicate suggested a trade agreement. Species calculated what they might gain from helping, what concessions they might extract. The Kreth representative grew more desperate with each refusal. Yira stood. Her pod speaker system carried her voice throughout the chamber. "I would like to address the council." High Arbiter Moloth looked annoyed. The Siren were not important enough for interruptions. "Representative Valeth, this matter does not directly concern your species." "All matters of suffering concern every species. That is precisely my point." The chamber fell quiet. Interrupting council protocol was rare. Making philosophical statements was even rarer. 6 months ago, I stood in this chamber begging for help, Yira continued. My people were dying. I had the 3rd highest military rank in my civilization. It meant nothing. Every major power in this council refused to help. She turned to look at the human delegation. Dr. Amira Akanjo sat in the front row, watching with quiet attention. Only one species answered. Humans. They sent ships within days, doctors within hours. They entered quarantine zones where death was almost certain. They found a cure that our own scientists could not develop. They saved my sister, my nephew, millions of my people. The chamber was completely silent now. When I asked them why they helped, they gave me an answer I did not understand. They said it was the right thing to do. No politics, no treaties, no calculations, just the right thing to do. Yira looked at the Kreth representative. The alien's feathers were drooping with shame and fear. The Kreth refused to help us. By the logic of galactic politics, we should refuse them now, balance the scales, teach them a lesson about consequences. She paused. But the humans taught me a different lesson. Help should not have conditions. Compassion should not require calculations. If people are suffering and we can help, we should help. That is all. She took a breath. I propose a new humanitarian coalition based on human principles, aid without conditions, action without endless debate, a standing agreement that when any species faces crisis, others will respond. Not for political advantage, not for future favors, simply because it is right. Dr. Akanjo stood in the human pod. Earth supports this proposal. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species protested, others expressed support. The Kreth representative stared at Yira with an expression she could not read. The vote was called. The coalition was not approved. Too many major powers opposed it. But it was closer than expected. 12 species voted in favor, enough to keep the proposal on the agenda for future sessions. After the session ended, Observer Dreth approached Yira. "You are damaging Siren political standing," he warned. "Aligning with humans makes you look weak, naive." Yira smiled. "When my people were dying, political standing meant nothing. The humans taught me that. Perhaps one day when your people need help, you will learn it too." Dreth slithered away without responding. Yira met the human delegation in a small conference room. Lewis was there, looking healthier than he had during the crisis. Kofi walked with his new cane, still smiling. Priya had brought cups of steaming brown liquid. "Coffee," she explained. "Human drink, very important for diplomacy." Yira took a cup. The smell was strange but not unpleasant. "Thank you," she said, "for coming today, for supporting the proposal." Lewis waved his hand. "We should be thanking you. Most species ignore us completely. You actually listened." "You ignored my rank." Yira took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter but interesting. "That was the best thing anyone has ever done for me." Priya laughed. "We ignore everyone's rank. It is a human tradition." "I have noticed." They sat in comfortable silence. Outside the window, the stars burned against the darkness. Somewhere out there, the Kreth colony was still starving. The council had approved minimal aid after long negotiations. Not enough, but something. "The coalition will pass eventually," Lewis said. "Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but eventually." "How can you be certain?" "Because ideas spread. The species that voted with us today will remember. They will talk to others. And when the next crisis comes, more will join." He smiled. "Humans are patient. We have been changing minds for thousands of years." Yira looked at her coffee, at the strange humans who had saved her world, at the future that suddenly seemed possible. "I have a long career ahead of me," she said. "Many years of votes and speeches and political battles." "Sounds exhausting." "It does." She raised her cup in a human gesture she had learned. "But I think it will be worth it." They drank together as the stars watched. And somewhere in the galaxy, a species that had once been ignored was slowly changing everything.